HPIE 3.0. I would request Architect Sanjay Singh, Director ARCOP, Architect Ames, to please address the audience. Please put your hands together for Mr. Sanjay Singh.
Good morning. I had a small presentation, if you would allow me. Can somebody look? So, the time that they upload the presentation, I will just little touch upon my thoughts on how I look at hospitals. There are such respected doyens of the industry sitting here. Dr. Chandrasekhar is here. I don't think I need to talk about the planning principles of the hospital, but what has bothered me, and I'm trying to address those issues through my design, are the issues that face the hospital experience, for the patients, for the attendants, and for the doctors. I am trying to do that in my design through the ongoing projects that we're doing, and some of the aspects of those concerns are basically the kind of scenes that we see in our hospitals today. Right from the time that the patient walks into the emergency or into the lobby, what their attendants go through. The vehicle comes in, and how do you get dropped off, and what happens in the lobby, and what happens in the waiting spaces, and once you get admitted into the hospital, what's the experience like, and and I started questioning that as to should the hospitals be really the sterile and aseptic environment that they have right now, and should we be looking at changing that somehow in our own ways. So to talk about the issues, I said, what are the prevalent issues with hospitals? And this is a typical scene at the drop-off or the driveway. Whether it is the emergency is a little more sorted because the number of vehicles that are coming in are lesser. But this is practically the scene that you would see in any hospital in front of the lobby. You go to a Fortis, you go to a Max, you go to a Apollo. People are jostling with each other. The cars are piled up one against the other, at the drop-off to get into the lobby. Then you have the circulation systems in the lobbies. They're all choke-a-block. And it is not always, I feel, the provision of the space. It is the layout of the space also. Like I said, they're insensitively designed lobby and atrium spaces. I just said, why do hospitals have to look like hospitals? There is no reason that all hospitals should look this aseptic, sterile sort of environment that we've started to, associate with hospitals. And then you have lack of interactive spaces. I feel, many of these issues would start getting sorted out on their own if you take an approach of patient first or patient-centric spaces, as we call them. And I think there is a real need for empathy to come in when you are designing healthcare. And we say design thinking plus healthcare is what becomes patient's delight. Delight may be not the right word because he's in there for treatment. So it could be patient's comfort, I would say. And that's where I think my perspective towards hospital designing would come in. I've kept it short and sweet so that I don't dwell on the principles, of the hospital planning. So effective problem solving, this is a case study that we took for a hospital that I have recently designed and under construction right now for Max in Gurgaon. So we said, how do you resolve these drop-off issues, that we just saw in the picture? And, the answer probably is to realize that everybody who's coming to the hospital is not dying. He's not ill, he's not sick, he's okay, he's ambulatory, he might be running a fever, he might be coming for a checkup. So he doesn't really need to get dropped off right in front of the lobby itself. Can you decongest that? And what is the best case study that you can have in terms of people coming, getting dropped off and going away, or people coming, getting picked up and the car going away? It's the airports. right? So we said, why don't we look at a drop-off which could emulate a airport-like drop-off experience, which is primarily nothing but a linear drop-off, right? So people who are not really sick, who really don't need to get down in front of the lobby, who don't have their limbs fractured or they don't need support, they would, instead of getting into a congested drop-off and waiting for their turn to get dropped off, don't mind getting dropped off 30 meters before. If you have a protected canopy system where they don't fall under the rain or the sun, they can walk in comfort. You have a wide, walkable sidewalk where people can walk. Most of us who go to a hospital would not mind that. So you would say, okay, I can get dropped off 50 meters before. I'll get out of my car, I'll walk it, and my car can get out. So that's how you can bring down the congestion. So we looked at an airport-like drop-off in case of Max. And then, taking this point further, I also questioned the fact, who are these people who are coming into the lobby, right? They're the patients, they're the patients' relatives, they may be the medical representatives, they may be the doctors themselves. Now, do the people who are related to people who are admitted to the hospital, would they like to come through the lobby? Or can we give them an express entry? If one of us has our relatives who's admitted to the hospital and we have to go there, 3 times or 4 times a day, why would you want to go through the lobby if the lobby is congested? Okay, so we questioned that, and if you look at the sketch, you would realize that there is an express entry which is right at the start of the site itself. There you see that you have a dedicated ramp which directly takes you down into the parking without coming into the property at all, right? So you just go down. So there you see, so you go down straight away and you go into the basement parking, and by doing that you've taken away, let's say, about 20% of the load which is going to come in front of the lobby. So you take that congestion away. Another set of people who come to the hospital for daycare, right? The people who come there for 3 times a week for dialysis, the people who come for their chemo sessions, do they all need to go through the lobby? Okay, they do need a certain kind of a drop-off, a certain kind of a arrival experience, but do we need to bring them through the main lobby itself when the lobby itself is getting choked off, right? So for that, what we did was, through this express entry only, this ramp takes you down to the lower ground, and we've created another lobby which is smaller in size to the main lobby, right? And that's the drop-off for the daycare guys, because the entire daycare of this hospital is at lower ground. Okay, so instead of getting people who are going to the daycare at the ground floor drop-off, we take them to the lower ground. They have their own drop-off, they have their own reception there, their car gets parked there, they do their business, whatever they have to do, and out they go, right? A lot of people who come for the chemo and for the radiations, etc., they don't want to come through the lobby, they don't want other people to see them. So why should you push them there? So by doing these interventions, if one can take away about 40% of the load of the lobby drop-offs and do airport-like drop-offs, I think we will be able to resolve it and address the issue to a very large extent. And this is not elitist hospital approaches that one is talking about. We can do this at AIIMS. We could do that at public hospitals. Nothing is stopping you, right? And then this is again Max Gurgaon that we're taking as a case study. It's my project. Once you've sort of addressed the issue of the lobby drop-offs, we also looked at the lobby itself and said, let the lobby become this large volume. If you looked at some of the pictures that I had shown you initially, one of the issues that is there in the lobby is not of space, but it is of the volume, right? You put people, a lot of people, you put 1,000 people in a spacious lobby which is 10 feet high ceiling, they will look congested. You put them the same number of people in a ceiling which is going to be 30 feet high, the experience will be very different, right? So we said, we'll have this lobby which is about 16,000 square feet. This is for a 500-bedded hospital, and it spreads onto the different areas, which are the waitings, the food courts, the cafes, etc., and seamlessly takes you up onto the upper levels through escalators. Again, a lot of people are ambulatory, they can use the escalators, there's no problem, and it takes away the loads on the elevators. So we did that. And this is the lobby of the Max Hospital. So this is 16,000 square feet, 31 meters by 50 meters, and it's approximately 12 meters, so 40 feet high. So it's the volume that will also address the psychological issues of overcrowding, right? And you can in this picture also see the large airport-like drop-off that I spoke about, so that people can get down and they can walk to the lobby instead of just waiting. Then, we turned our attention to the attendants' relatives. Another form of crowding, another form of conflicts where people lose their cool, they start raising their voices, and there are a lot of issues, are when the bills are to be settled. Logically so. Everybody feels that the hospital are shortchanging us, they're charging us a bomb, and why should I pay, and all that. And that's also because people are not able to be explained properly of what's going on. So we said, instead of having a 500-bedded hospital, out of which maybe 150 people are getting discharged in a day, those 150 people coming to the IPD settlement at one level, why don't you diffuse them? All right. So what we did was we made the elevator lobby for the attendants on every floor. All right. We enlarged that into a lounge. And what that did was, it acted as a holding up area for the attendants. If they wish, they could sit there instead of the room every time, right? And that's also where all your billing and all your explanations about your discharge, everything happens there. So you don't need to get into a central system. You've decentralized the whole system, right? And this brought me to another point, that while the patient is going through the treatment, what is it that the attendant is going through? He's locked up in the same room as the patient himself. And there are many times that it's a double-bedded room, or it's a 4-bedded ward, where you have issues of the other guy's attendants also being there. And what are you doing exactly? You're just sitting there. The patient is sleeping, he's being looked after. You are there because you don't want your patient to be just left alone. But you are in the process feeling depressed. So why should you be there all the time? If you can just be there in the room next doors. So this Discharge Lounge does that for you, right? So it acts as an arrival space where people can come, sit down. There is a food and beverage counter there, which is just the finger foods and the coffee, etc. People can sit here, they can watch TV while the patient sleeps. But here, and from here straight away they can go into the lower ground, floor pickup, where they get into the car with their patient and out they go. So you're not coming into the common areas of the hospital, you're not congesting it in any way. And that led me to think about another aspect. Again, these have been part personal experiences and part observations professionally, as to what the different stakeholders, what the different experiential instances of a hospital looks like. So while the attendant is going through whatever he is going through, I again say that everybody who goes into the hospital is not very, very sick. There are people who go to hospitals for different reasons, right? And if somebody is admitted, for let's say 5 days, out of that, at least 1 day is ambulatory. He's okay. He's about to go home, right? The doctors would tell you one night before, you're feeling okay, but we'll keep you for 1 more day for observation. He's just lying on the bed, right? And he doesn't want to. So can we create every floor these family lounges, which are about 8 by 5, 40, 50, 500 square feet or so, all right, where this patient, if required, can walk out of his room and sit there, watch a little TV, read a little book, have a little coffee or whatever, but he's still in the same room because he's off the drips. He's on a little bit of meds, which is going to continue when he goes home, and have a change of ambience. And we all know that there are soft experiences which lead to better treatment. You do that by color, you do that by light, you also do that by daylight, you also do that by changing the environment of the patient. We do that. Whenever I unfortunately fall ill, I make it a point every day to get up, I take a bath, I change into new clothes, and then I get into the bed again. Makes me feel better. I become better earlier. So we create these family lounges, and when we created these lounges, what we realized is that I was expecting a bit of a pushback from the hospital, planners, from the client side, because they were losing 2 rooms, right, every floor. But they told me it's a fantastic idea, and I hadn't looked at the different angle to it that they gave me. They told me, this helps us, and it helps us in a way which I had not thought about. They said, when a patient has to get discharged, he's told in the morning that he's getting discharged, but it takes about 5 to 6 hours for him to get discharged because his insurance bills have not come in, whatever. And till the time that the hospital gets all their money, they're not letting him go out of the hospital. So they are not able to allot his bed to a new patient, right? So what this does is that it allows that patient to go into the family lounge, sit there, wait for 3-4 hours, have his coffee, watch his movies or whatever, and his bed gets allotted to a new patient who's lying in the emergency, and subsequently the other guy who's lying outside the emergency, he can get into the emergency, so your footfalls and your healthcare response improves. Now that was a different angle to the whole thing. And then to extend that, we created these healing garden and terraces, which we said are these open spaces where the patients can step out. Of course, we have to look at the safety, of the patients. So those are going to be built in. We'll make sure that, nobody, if he feels suicidal, can jump out from there. So that's going to be taken care of. But you can still create these unique double-story high, terraces in the sky, which can act as outdoor breathing spaces for the patients and, help them get well sooner. We also looked at art and architecture, which is again a proven, aspect that art helps you heal much faster. So can we bring in a color? This is our OPD, one of the designs of OPD in Max, where we said the walls are going to be treated with art. They could be done in different manners. And when we addressed everybody, the Dr. Saab at Max said, sabke liye kuch kar diya, boss, hamara kya hai? And which is right. So we said, okay, so we gave them lounges, and if you see, there is a staircase there, okay, outside the lounge. So from this staircase you can go up, and there's a terrace garden on top of this, which is not captured here. And we said, okay, for the doctors, they can go and they don't have to be there next to the patient all the time. So they also need their relaxation time, and so that they can address the healthcare much better. So we gave them the doctors' lounges. So that's about my design responses to these experiences that I have had in the hospitals, and try to see if we can make the hospitals more, I wouldn't say interesting, but a more cheerful place to be, instead of being a more drab and sterile place to be. The hospitals don't have to look dead. They're not meant for dead people. They're meant for people to go and not get dead. So we looked at that, and then we looked at safety. And I will tell you this, about this project which we're doing. This is the Lokmanya Tilak Municipal Hospital in Sion. This is the largest municipal hospital in Mumbai. Having 17 acres of land in the middle of Mumbai is not a joke. So they're large from all points of views. And they commissioned us to do the entire revamp on the master plan of Sion Hospital. Okay, with the condition that not one bed will get stopped for one day. And we had a very little small patch to build. So we built a 70-meter high building first to accommodate all the nurses, the nursing college, the RMOs, etc. Shifted them there, and now the phase 2 is going to start. But in terms of the master planning, one aspect, let me tell you, which I learned there, while my interaction was going on with the doctors there. If you see here, this is the emergency, and the blue one that you see is the emergency medical ambulance entry and exit, right? And when I was speaking to them, they told me of this very, heart-rendering incident. They said when the Bombay blasts happened, there were people who were coming by the ambulances, hundreds of ambulances. The city had no dearth of ambulances. So there were ambulances which were lined up all the way here on this road. Okay, and there were 5 ambulances inside. And they said we couldn't go out of the hospital. All right. In those first 5 ambulances, most of the people were the ones who had a burn, who had a cut, who had some other minor injury. And they were there, they were trying to treat them. And they were holding up people who were in these ambulances on the road. And somebody had his hand blown away. Okay, somebody's eye had gone out. They were the people who were in need of healthcare. All right. But these guys who were just scarred were holding everybody up. And by the time they got rid of these guys, okay, these guys had died. Okay, he says, how do we address that? So I said, okay, we will do this blue when you have regular emergencies, but you have unfortunately bad stuff happening, then we follow this. Okay, what that does is it gives you much more lineup in terms of ambulances. So instead of 5, I can get 100 ambulances inside the hospital. Created this area as a tented area, as an open area, right? Where they would get the person out of the ambulance, check him. If he's minor injury, treat him from there and get him out. And they have teams stationed here. So if somebody is more serious, they get him out here only, and on a stretcher they get him to the emergency instead of waiting for the ambulance to move up the snail space. And they appreciated this, amazingly. They said, we are going to ensure that we're going to have this protocol installed and the infrastructure ready for this kind of response in each of our hospitals in Mumbai, right? So that was a small, intervention that you can do for a disaster management. And then, you look at the evacuation strategy. We just keep talking about fire, which is, of course, the most important aspects of evacuation. But there are earthquakes, there are other situations that happen. There are bomb scares. How do you get people down, from a hospital? 500, patients, maybe 200 of them are in very critical space. Maybe 200, another 200 are not ambulatory, maybe 100 are, okay. How do you get them down by the, suggested ramps that we have in our National Building Code? How many people will you get down by a ramp, even with a 1:20 impossible sort of a slope that we are talking about? It's almost impossible. So we suggested this again at Sion Hospital, and we said we are going to build your hospital in modules. And these red lines that you see are actually firewalls, right? And the refuge centers happen in between them. So what this allows you to do is it allows you to, if there's a fire in, let us say, this block, all right, from this block you can transfer patients to this side and this side, right? And then from here they can be evacuated at a slower rate, even by regular elevators, because all the blocks are not going to catch fire together, right? So that we said, instead of vertical evacuation, which should be there and can carry on to be there, we do horizontal evacuation in compartmentalized zones. And this is what we said, that in terms of disaster management, you create horizontal evacuation opportunities, and you have interchangeable modules with respect to each of the module is independently with vertical evacuation routes planned. And then you have these red lines, which are 2 to 4 hour fire rated walls, which also do a structural job. And the purple ones are the ones where you have refuge areas where they can come out and be rescued. And that's how the after once you've transferred horizontally, then you can be evacuated vertically also. So that's just some thoughts. I didn't want to make it too long. I wanted it to be non-preachy. I wanted it to be more of a experience sharing with all of you guys. I hope it's been of some value to you. Thank you.